Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining another Smart Home Choice podcast. My name is Gary Hibbert, and I'm actually really excited about today's podcast because there's a lot of really good information on here. But before we kind of jump right into it, please do me a favor. I want you guys to all go to www.smarthomechoice.ca and do me a favor, when you're there, please join our newsletter and subscribe, because what I want you guys to do is to get a free copy of my real estate investment book that I wrote. And and I think what you guys will find in there is some really good information. And there's these things that I've learned from some of my early mentors. And while you're there, check out some of our videos and also just take a look around the website. Just kind of just poke around, see what's there. And I think you guys will find some really good content on there. Okay. Now, on to today's call, I had the privilege to sit down with a really good friend of mine, Ryan Carr, and one of the things that I've realized that when you're investing in real estate, and especially in a market that continues to move in an upward trend, after a few years, it does become quite challenging to find a good deal. And that is really what your average investor would say. But if you become a savvy investor like Ryan Carr, that doesn't stop you. And really what Ryan Carr has done is he has been able to use a very unique strategy that's allowed him to separate himself from the average investor to really the savvy investor. And what I want you guys to do is just to take some time out of your busy schedule, and I get it. There's so many different things that are going on in your lives, between work and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all these other distractions that are happening. But if you really want to get a good grasp and an understanding of what it takes to be a real estate investor, and not only just that, but just to be successful, on this call, Ryan Carr is really going to share that with you guys today. So on this call, you're going to learn a very unique strategy that Ryan shares. I think this is going to really help to take a lot of the investors that are out there to really kind of take their game to the next level, but only, and I mean this, only if they really and truly want to. The information is here. It's just a matter whether or not you guys decide to use it to your advantage. All right, so enjoy the podcast, and I will talk to you guys next month. Take care. Bye. Okay, so Ryan, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
All right, cool. So we've got Ryan Carr on the call, and we've actually had Ryan on this call, or sorry, on the podcast before last year, and we actually had him on the call with Dan Caird, and we were talking about the purchase plus improvement, an incredible strategy, and I know something that you've taken really, huge advantage of. Correct, Ryan?
Yeah, for sure. It's great.
Yeah, no, it is a fantastic program. But in this call, we're going to kind of focus everything on Ryan today, and Ryan's been doing some incredible things over the past couple of years, and I guess before we just kind of jump right into this here, how did you kind of get right into real estate investing? What really kind of interested you about it?
Back in 2012, my wife and I had bought our first home. Didn't really know a whole lot about real estate. Didn't know really a whole lot about real estate investing. It was sort of just that time in our lives where we wanted to move out of our parents' house and buy a place together. So we ended up buying a place in Durham Region, and it was a bank sale. It was our very first property, and the place was disgusting, like so bad.
Right.
And my realtor at the time had said, like, you can't buy this place. It's pretty gross. I support you if you do, but for the same amount of money, you can get something that's finished, kind of in town, because this was more of a rural property.
Right.
We can get you something, nicer, move-in ready, and for your first go around, it might be a better bet. And we said, no, we want a challenge. So we bought it, and that was a bank sale property. We ended up fixing it up and flipping it, and we did pretty well. And that was the very first taste of how real estate could change your life.
Right. And from like how much time went by from the time when you bought it to when you sold it?
I think we were there for 2 years, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe
about
2
2
years.
years.
Yeah, maybe a year and a half, something like that. And it wasn't intended to be a flip at the beginning. It was just intended to be a nice home. It sat on a couple acres, and it was in a pretty good location on a major route. And there was really no intent there to flip, but we quickly realized with what was happening with the market that we might have something unique on our hands, and taking advantage of that was definitely in our best interest.
Right. So what specifically was it though that really kind of gravitated you to the real estate investing? Was it the flipping aspect of it? Was it what you had made from like the proceeds you'd made from the sale? Was there something specific?
Yeah, you know what? I think it was a success from our first two properties. So if I can backtrack a little bit, our first property we had some interest in, and it was kind of fun. The second property was kind of where this whole process took shape. So the initial intent was more of a buy and hold on our second property, and the realtor who had sold us the first place said, "Hey, I've got an investment opportunity. Have you ever considered buying a rental house?" And we both said no. We just bought our first place, and this is all sort of new. And she says, "Well, I've got a great opportunity here if you're interested." And so we said, "Oh, we're not sure, but we'll come and check it out." So I said to her, like, "Are you sure? And are you sure this is going to be a good place to put our money? And is it going to be safe?" And she said, "Yep, it's going to be safe. You just have to trust me." So we did it. We ended up selling that place too, haphazardly. But that's sort of where the interest began. Was after we sold that place, we made some money. After we sold our house, we made some money, and we said, "Hey, this is working. Let's keep doing this because we're in a great market. It's a safe and secure market, which is very important, and the returns have been pretty good up to this point. Let's keep going with it."
Right. So that's amazing. So kind of walk us through then, how you got from where you were and where you first started to where you are today. Because I think, for the listeners, that's probably, I would say, one of the biggest stumbling block is, they come to the networking events, they see go to the real estate classes, and they're excited and they're pumped, but sometimes they have that difficulty from kind of visioning from where they are now to where they're going to be in the future. So how did you do it? Where did that, you kind of just walk us through that whole transition?
Sure. So from the first two properties that I just described to where my business stands now is I've gone from doing all the work myself to having a full-time crew and taking on more of a managerial role, finding the properties, putting the deals together, making sure that the work gets done to the way that myself and our team sees fit. Making the transition into that point obviously was difficult. So for anybody looking to do so, you got to ask a lot of questions. That's number one. Turn into a sponge. Whatever books you can get your hands on, whatever seminars are out there, go to these things. Go to the groups. Go to the monthly meetings. Go to the classes. Don't become a junkie. And don't not do anything with the information that you get. But you've got to take the information and then apply it to your life because everybody's situation is so different, right? So for me, I took a lot of that information. I put it in, not a file folder, but, I put it in my head and I said, okay, how can I use this in my reality and make it work for me? Right. So I think really just putting all the pieces of the puzzle together with the information at hand and mixing that in with your lifestyle is the biggest first step.
Right. And I guess it's fair enough to say that you don't need to have all the information. Just to get some of that information and go out there and take the action. That's what it sounds like you're saying.
Totally. Yeah. You have to do something at some point. So get some information, be educated in what you're doing. Don't go into it blind. Everybody says, "Oh, you got to jump in 2 feet forward, jump in head first, whatever." Yeah, they're right. But I mean, be smart about it. Don't be reckless.
Right.
Get some information, talk to some people who have done it before, maybe even partner with those people, and then go in and try it. But you got to try it, right? That's the most important thing.
Right. And along the way, that all the the success that you've had, and to where you are right now, have you had a lot of failure in between? Have you had lots of mistakes and issues and problems?
I've had micro failures in between when I started to now. I've been pretty fortunate in the sense that I've not lost money on any of my deals. Every deal has been positive and had a positive outcome for myself or my investors if I'm partnering with somebody or anything like that. So we've been really fortunate that way. But I think everybody goes through micro failures or micro changes within building that business of lifestyle change or dealing with people inside of your business or trying to find contractors that are suitable for what you want to do, or there's all kinds of intricacies that happen within there, but we've been fairly fortunate so far.
Yeah, no, that's good, and that's a good way of actually explaining it as well too, because I've actually had lots of micro failures as well too, but I can honestly say that I haven't lost any money on any real estate investing deal that I've done so far. I've broken even, and that was more like in the
Yeah,
beginning when I first started, but it's just been an incredible journey, and it sounds like it's been the same for you as well too.
yeah, absolutely. That's great. I mean, if you don't make money but you preserve your principal, I think that's number one. When you're evaluating a deal, you need to look at the security of the deal before you look at anything else like the returns. Because if you lose your principal, well, then you're out of the game.
Right.
But if at least you can either make money, which is ideal, or preserve your principal and try to do it again, well, then you still got opportunities.
Right. And now, did you do any joint ventures at all, or was it just all your capital when you first started?
My first couple deals, I think my first 3 deals, maybe 3, 4 deals, something like that, were all my own capital. Um, that was, I guess, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, somewhere, I don't know, 2 to 4 years ago were my
Right.
first couple deals. And then last year we did 7 deals. A couple of those were joint venture, and then a couple of those were my own money as well.
7 deals. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's just from really going. Would you? Okay, so to get to 7 deals in 1 year, okay, and
Okay.
it's incredible. But I just want people to understand. So how do you do 7 deals in 1 year? Like I get it, I
Yeah.
understand it, but how do people get to that? Because that's such a huge accomplishment, and people don't think that they
Hmm.
can because they don't have the capital.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? They're half right and they're half wrong. So 7 deals in 1 year. That broke down to a couple flips, some buy and holds, some joint venture money, some private equity of my own, some refinance. It was a number of different strategies that culminated into one. And kind of like what we were just talking about, how do you make real estate work for you? So I was able to make it work for me by doing a number of these strategies that I learned about, right? And putting them together for a portfolio that worked with my lifestyle and my mentalities and my goals and all that stuff. So I guess pick it off the top of my head, 2 or 3 deals last year. Of those 7 deals were joint venture partners. So my joint ventures are structured in the sense that my money partner puts up all the cash and I do all the work. So I find the deals, I put the deals together, I structure them appropriately. I do all the renovations with my guys. We go back, we refinance the property, and we take the cash and then we can recycle. So it's not just one strategy that's going to get you ahead. It's a combination of everything and seeing your opportunities as a whole that really perpetuates you into buying more deals.
Right. So using leverage definitely is so it's like number one. Number two, using joint ventures or other people's money,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of just going out there and taking action. That's what it sounds like is what allowed you to get to those 7 deals. I think everybody, and I guess also a team, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
right. And
For sure.
because
I
I
mean,
think
you gotta look at your income as well. What can your income support? And at some point, depending on the lender that you choose, you might get capped out at say 1 property, or you might get capped out at 4 properties, and you'd have to go to a lender that would support more of a bulk portfolio type of a lending style. So that's another way you have to look at it. How far do you want to go? How fast do you want to get there? And how much dough do you need? And then you structure backwards.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's amazing. Great year. Phenomenal. Okay, so now
Thank you.
I want to kind of get into this next question here because this is actually really cool. And you've got a very unique way of maximizing the rents that you get from your rental property. So can you kind of share what it is that you do and how this strategy works and and if it's been tested and proven because it's actually pretty unique. So just kind of just walk us through that.
Yeah, so the technique that I like to use on some of my properties is called vertical split. And how it works, if we use your typical 1960s Durham Region bungalow as a good example, I look for a property that's got a separate side entrance typically, and that side entrance may be on the back or the side, as well as a front door. So we've got two ways to enter and exit the property. And then if you took that property and split it vertically down the center rather than horizontally as a traditional main floor basement apartment, what I'm doing is creating a bi-level home for both sides of the rental unit, right? Giving the effect of a full home without the square footage. And it's all about, perceived feeling about being in the property. And a lot of tenants, when they walk into these vertical split homes, they say, wow, so I get upstairs and downstairs. Everybody gets two levels to their home, and it really gives a great feeling of being, getting more than you're paying for, because you're not paying by, price per square foot. You're paying by tenant perception.
Right. And can you do that with a two-story, or is it just specifically with a bungalow?
You can absolutely do it with a two-story. You can do it in a bungalow. I've actually done it inside of a semi, which is pretty cool too. I'm creating a semi within a semi, so that's it was a really neat layout there. But you can do it in almost any property, depending on the way that the home is laid out inside. Now, some of the vertical splits would be maybe, if we're using a bungalow again, would be a main floor and a basement for each unit. If you're doing it in a two-story home like I've done in the past, I would give the main floor basically a vertical split. So I'd cut the main floor in half, and the tenant A would have the front half of the main floor plus all of upstairs, and then tenant B might have the back half of the main floor plus all of the downstairs. Right. So there's a number of ways that we can do it to split up the living space so each tenant gets two stories, but it's just dependent on the way that the property is set up.
Right. And what about say a side split or a back split? Can you make it work with those homes, or have you even looked at that?
Absolutely. Two of the properties that I've done vertical splits in have been in back splits or side splits, and then two of the properties that I've done have actually been in two-story homes. So I've done 4 vertical splits now, and they've worked out great. The side splits almost have a vertical split naturally built into them because they're already on, 2 or sometimes 3 levels. But if you have a property that's a 2-story home, you basically just have to recreate that.
Right. And so, okay, so now you walk into this home. Can you tell almost kind of right away if it's going to work or not, or do you have to kind of go back home, draw it out, and then try and figure it out from that standpoint?
Yeah, I wouldn't go back home and draw it out. I mean, I think on-site is always the best way to evaluate. But I usually have a pretty good sense when I walk in on the way that I'll separate this house. So, for instance, where the staircases are positioned is really important. Where the entrances and exits are is really important. What kind of windows are existing in the property that I can use to my advantage? Where am I going to put the fire separations? All of these things run through my mind, as well as, cost for the renovation. All of these things run through my mind as to, is this an effective use of the property? Is this the highest and best use of this property? Is a standard basement apartment a more cost-effective solution here? What kind of rents am I going to generate using a vertical split technique versus a single-family home versus long-term buy and hold or a flip? Or, all of these things run through my mind when I'm evaluating a deal, because there's not always one cut and dry answer to anything in real estate, not just a vertical split.
Right. And is there a certain size of home that you need that you can do this on? Like, is there a minimum square footage home that you just need at least be 1,200 upstairs or on the main floor?
Yeah, there is. As far as concrete numbers go, it would be tough to put a figure on it. But if we go back to the Ontario Building Code, a minimum bedroom size is, I believe, roughly 10 by 10. So, we have to make sure that we meet all of the building standards for that. A kitchen has to be a certain size, and then every room has to have a certain amount of natural light. So it all breaks down to, are we going to meet building code? And if the answer is yes, then we go to the next steps, right? When I see a property, I mean, if a quote-unquote bedroom is smaller than 10 by 10, nobody's going to want to live there anyways, right? So either I have to knock a wall out to make that room bigger, or if it's smaller than 10 by 10, it's, at best case scenario, it's an office.
Right.
But beyond that, if it doesn't function, then the property is probably not worth it.
And is there more cost associated with doing the vertical split as opposed to doing the traditional upstairs, downstairs?
I used to say it's probably 5 to 10% more. In some recent cases, I've seen it's fairly comparable to a standard up-down split, standard basement apartment. But it really depends on the way the fire separation plays out, because Roxol and resilient channel and 5/8 drywall adds like a major cost to your renovation. The sound separation is great and all that, but to make sure that you're still compliant is really important. To put an exact figure on it, for estimation purposes, anywhere from comparable to upwards of 10% would be the number I would place. But again, it just depends on the property. Either way, let's say it's the same, your cash flow is going to be better, and let's say it's 10% more, you're going to make that 10% difference back way sooner, and then you're reaping the benefits from there on out.
Right. So your preference is now when you look at a property is to try and do a vertical split, it sounds like.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, if you're leaving $300 a month of cash flow on the table, if that's what you can get more maybe from a property by using this technique, why wouldn't you do it, right? From an investment standpoint, that's a no-brainer. If the renovations are comparable or, close, whatever, go ahead, do it. Bump that cash flow up. And from an investor standpoint, your ROIs look fantastic on paper, and that's how you attract joint venture money.
That's amazing. Now, is there a specific location that you're kind of focusing on? Is it, like in the Durham region and whereabouts?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much strictly a Durham Region investor. I really like the appreciation that's going on out here, and the development is pretty important too. I like to focus in Oshawa myself. That's where most of my properties have been. We've got some out in Clarington as well, but Oshawa seems to be kind of where it's at for me.
Okay, great. That's good. So what kind of returns are you seeing, though, from the type of investing that you're doing? Because it obviously seems that you like that vertical split, and it looks like it's obviously something you're going to continue to do. So for an investor that's out there, they're listening, maybe they want to do a JV with you. What are you seeing for returns?
Yeah, so I mean, the vertical split is really good. You can't look at the vertical split. You can't really compare a vertical split to another property. You have to compare the vertical split to itself. So when I say that, you have to look at the property that you're going to do this technique with and compare it to a traditional basement apartment. So if a property that would typically sell for, say, $300,000, right, would have a one-bedroom apartment in it, it might generate, X number of dollars per month in cash flow and then a return of so much. If you did a vertical split with that same property, you need to compare how much the renovation is going to cost versus the amount of rent that it will generate extra per month versus a traditional basement suite. And then you compare those returns together, right? So you can't go property to property, but you have to compare it, versus traditional renovating style. As far as the returns itself go, I typically won't buy anything unless it returns at least 30%. And 30% or better, or any appreciation, or sorry, not appreciation, any return would be calculated based on principal recapture on the mortgage, cash flow, and appreciation on the property itself.
Okay. So if somebody calls in and says, hey, I got something here, they'll give you 25% return, you're not getting out of bed. Pretty much, right?
Yeah, I would still go and check it out because you might be able to do something better than they see, right? That's where the best deals are found. One of my mantras actually is, good deals are found, great deals are created. So I would definitely go and check it out. But for 25%, I think I could do better elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, and sometimes, and you hit on a good point there, is that, sometimes somebody else takes a look at something, but you can come in with a different vision and completely change what they see and boost those returns. So, it's a really good point. And then with these properties as well too, you're obviously going through the whole legalization process. So you're making sure that, before you get in there, that this is a property that you can legalize.
Yes, for sure. Sure. So you need to think about your zoning. You need to think about if you are doing a legal suite, you have to think about your resilient channel, your 5/8 drywall, your Roxol sprinklers, parking, window space, that kind of thing. It all has to be worked in. Now, one of the big benefits of a vertical split is that depending on the way the property is laid out, so let's say that your one unit is on the left side of the house, your other unit is on the right side of the house, right? And if we're using a bungalow as a comparison, the basement suite adjoining the same unit. So like, let's say your basement on the left is adjoining the main floor unit up on top of it. You wouldn't have to fire separate that because it is not a separate unit. That's the same dwelling. You'd only have to fire separate the wall that's in between both units because that would be your fire separation wall. So the way that you do your fire separation here is also something to consider because it's not the same as a traditional basement apartment.
Right. So now, I mean, you could take a look at a property where you're like, okay, you know what, the basement height isn't where it needs to be, or maybe even one section of it because of the ductwork. So you could potentially now legalize a home where one home maybe only has one floor and the other one may potentially have two. Is that even a possibility too, Ryan?
Yep, you can do a two-level home for sure. If you have a basement that doesn't meet the 6'5" requirement, if it's not living space down there, you could still create a duplex out of that if it were a vertical split. That living space in the basement could potentially be storage, and the living area, the actual like a kitchen, bedroom, whatever, could be on your main floor. That person could still have the effect of a two-level home, right? And now you've opened up opportunities to properties that previously investors would have turned away from because you don't meet the requirements for a standard traditional basement apartment.
Right. That's brilliant. That's such a phenomenal idea because I just really opened up so much doors for so many investors. So thanks so much for kind of sharing that. So what are your plans, for real estate investing over the next 3 to 5 years?
3 to 5 years is it's tough. I mean, right now we're in the acquisition stage of just getting properties that are efficient, that cash flow well, that are easily managed. So I think 5 years would be a little bit far out, but I mean, within the next 1 to 3 years is kind of where my focus is right now, just on property acquisition. So finding joint venture partners that are able to fund these deals when I either run out of capital or lending leverage, that kind of thing, is very important to my business. I've got some great partners now who support me, I support them, and it's a great relationship. So expanding on that to another 1 or 2 investors would be pretty important. But it's just, for me, it's just acquisition. That's it.
Right. Okay. So you're in the build phase right now, and you're keeping these properties, or are you flipping some of them?
We're keeping most of them. We did a couple flips last year just to earn some income, and everybody has to live, right? But the whole goal here is to keep these properties, keep them in good repair, keep good working relationships with your tenants, right? So that every month that property keeps generating cash flow for you. And once you get to the point of solid cash flow generating properties every month and enough of them, well, you're not working anymore, right? You're a property manager full time. You can travel, you can do all these wonderful things, and then if you want to work, it's a bonus.
Yeah, and that's an amazing feeling to get to that level. And even if you have your own mortgage and your mortgage is X amount and you've got enough properties that can carry now your mortgage, you're essentially almost mortgage free. That's the way I look at it. I've got my tenants that are paying for my mortgage, so that's great. Okay, so what about long-term goals? Where do you see things, say, 15, 20 years for Ryan Carr and his family?
Wow. I think early retirement would be fantastic. Looking at 20 years is sort of tough at 27, but retirement would be fantastic. I think the idea here, and part of my why as to why I'm investing the way that I am and why I'm being so aggressive early on, is because I never want to have to worry about money. I never want to have to worry about do I have time to raise a family properly? These are all things that are really important that I'm trying to set myself up for now, as well as some of my investors, so that we can all feel the same benefits and we can all feel the same freedom, moving forward. I think at some point, collapsing the bungalows and the semi-detached homes and the single-family dwellings and the duplexes, maybe into a big pot of money, and then buying an apartment building with that cash would be something we could look forward to, just from a management perspective and a simplicity perspective. Maybe having a property manager on site that does some of this, and you just reap the residual benefits from whatever cash flow is left over there. But I think lifestyle is one of my main goals at this point, and then the real estate is what's allowing me to do that.
Well, you've definitely accomplished a lot for the age of 27, so that's amazing. So I'm happy for you. Now,
Thank you.
now I know you're married, and sometimes people do have a bit of a challenge with this, where one spouse is on board and the other one really isn't. Did you come across that situation at all, and if so, how did you overcome that?
I never really did. My wife was always very supportive. The first couple properties we did together. She kind of did the design side, picking colors and locating the properties and that kind of thing. And I was more of the hands-on, make it work type of guy. Now she's not really involved with the real estate at all. She's got her own business, but she's still very supportive of what I do, because at the end of it, it's still our money that we're investing. It's still our equity that we're tying up into properties. And your spouse has to be on board, because when you come home at night, you don't want to have to battle and go through the hardships of what real estate may be doing to your relationship. You guys have to be on the same page, and fortunately, my wife and I, we are on the same page, and she's happy with what I'm doing, and we're seeing positive results. Everything's good.
Right. And I mean, did she come up to the networking or to the mastermind events with you, or was it more like, hey, listen, I trust you, go do your thing, and I'll help you in a couple of areas?
Yeah, it was just an I trust you, go do your thing. Be smart about it, and think about your why, and go for it, have fun.
Right. And so okay, so now you're doing well with the real estate investing, and you just touched on something that's really important, is that why. Can you maybe kind of just talk a little bit more about that and why that's so important?
Absolutely. So, like I was mentioning before, my why is lifestyle. So my current why right now is I want to have enough cash flow that I don't have to worry about my monthly bills, and that my properties are taken care of, my primary residence is taken care of, and then any work, earned income type thing that we do right now is a bonus, and I use that money to reinvest into properties. That's my why right now. My why in 5 years might be, or will be, to raise a family and to have enough income that sustains our family, as well as the income that allows us the lifestyle that we want. I think for a lot of people, it's a very similar why. They want enough money to not have to worry about it, but not so much money that you don't have to do anything at all. So, it's a very fine balance, and everybody's why is a bit different. But I think that's the general consensus from a number of the investors that I've dealt with. It's just overall security and great lifestyle.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that's one of the things too, when I sit down and I have a chat with like a beginning investor is, I really focus on, tell them to focus on that why. And one of the things that I say too is purpose is stronger than object. And really what that means is, when I first started investing in real estate, I would actually tie a huge why to a property, meaning that I would say this home is for my son's education. So now it tied that why to it, and it made it so much stronger that try and stop me from not giving my son that education.
Yeah.
And that's really what you're saying is why that why is so important.
Exactly. If you have no purpose, then why are you doing it? Right? There's no motivation behind it. There's no, I know for me that I don't come from a wealthy background. I never had an education in real estate. So my successes in real estate and my interest in real estate only came because I wanted to do it, right? If somebody forced me and said, hey, you have to do real estate, I don't know if I would feel the same way and feel as happy as I am now doing what I'm doing than being able to generate that on my own with self-interest.
Right. Now I know you've done a couple joint venture deals, and I think that's always a bit of a stumbling block for some investors. how do you attract joint ventures, and how do some of the conversations take place? Because that's such an important piece to real estate investing, because there comes a time when you will run out of capital.
Yeah.
Do you have
Okay.
any tips on
So
that?
absolutely. So my current joint venture partners came fairly naturally. None of which are family per se. They're all outside money. So I think a lot of it came from them seeing the successes and some of the things that I was doing with the vertical split. Some of my intricacies of the way that I was investing. I think a lot of them saw that and they said, hey, I want to take part in what you're doing because it seems very interesting to me. So I think having a hook in what you're investing in and being able to separate yourself from the other players in the game is very important. You need to be unique. So that's one way that I separated myself, was just to kind of be unique in some of my styles. Another thing is honesty. I think you need to be honest with people. Tell them your successes, tell them your failures, be totally open. And if you're totally open and honest with them, they'll be totally open and honest and comfortable with you. That's very, very important.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think that's where a lot of times, some investors make that mistake. Say, but I've been trying, and I'm showing them the numbers and everything, and it's just not working. I think sometimes they get so caught up in trying to sell the actual deal itself that they're not selling themselves.
Yes,
And
that's
and I
right.
and I think that's such an important piece as well too. Is that if you sell yourself, and they trust in you and they believe in you, they'll do deals with you. They'll find a way to want to do a deal with you.
Absolutely. I always said if you have to sell it, it's probably not right. If the numbers work and the security of the investment is there and the property is good, or it could have potential to be good, everything will sell itself. You don't need to pitch it.
Exactly. Sometimes, so the performa, I don't even take that out until we're actually saying, okay, well, listen, well, I'll give you a call in a couple weeks. Hey, look, here's a performa sheet. Take it over. Let me know if you have any questions. Like I don't even go over it with them.
Yeah.
It's not even
Yeah.
it's not even part of my whole sales tactic. And now, when I first started, and it wasn't working. And
Hmm.
and then I obviously got some coaching and listened to some podcasts, and then I learned, how is the best way to actually do it. But no, that's
Yeah.
a good strategy.
And that's funny because you know what? I don't even do a pro forma. I'm a very conversational, keep it simple, sit down over coffee and let's talk about this type of investor. Like I don't pull out spreadsheets and I don't do all that. I will show up to a meeting with nothing but a pen and a blank piece of paper, and I will create the quote unquote pro forma right in front of them. I will show them this is how it works, this is why it works, this is why I feel this investment is secure, right? And we'll go from there. I'll generate that right in front of them. And I can't make it up, right? It's there, the numbers are there, the numbers don't lie, the returns are there, the returns don't lie. Money in, money out. That's how it works. There's no pro forma here.
Yeah, no, and that's good. That's a good strategy. And a lot of times too, I just got that blank sheet as well. I can't tell you how many times I've drawn a picture of a house, and with
It's great.
arrows
It's
and
awesome. Yeah.
and dollar signs, and
You're
it
going to
works
draw a
out.
vertical split. You got
Yeah,
to do that next time.
exactly. I'm actually doodling right now on this piece of paper with a vertical split home here. So yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Okay. So is there a success quote that you can share to the listeners that's really had a huge impact on your life?
Yeah, there's a guy by the name of Eric Thomas, and he goes by the Hip Hop Preacher on YouTube, and he's got this really cool delivery, very cool comic collective. So then he gets really excited and really into it, and he tells this story, and I probably won't be able to do it justice because the delivery is just so spot on. But he tells the story of somebody wanting to be successful, and he goes and he finds the master of what he wants to be successful at, and the master takes him out onto a beach, and he tells him to walk out in the water. And this guy says, why do you want me to walk out on the water? I just want to be successful. And you told me if I met you here, that's how I would be able to do it. Right. And this guy says, walk out in the water a little further, a little further, a little further. Then the master grabs his head and holds him underwater. And the guy's squirming and shaking and trying to get out, and he won't let him. Right. And he keeps holding his head down. And just before the guy passes out, he brings his head up. And this guy says, Master, why did you do that to me? Why'd you hold my head underwater? And he says, I held your head underwater because if you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, that's when you'll be successful. And it always stuck with me. It really resonated. And, to this day, I live like that, and I think about that all the time. How bad do you want it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You got to have that determination, that fire, and that burn in you, because there's going to be there's some tough times. There's times when things you go really bad, and that's a great example where being under the water like that. There's times where I'm like, this is just not going to work. I just don't see any way out of this, and you just keep going, and eventually you will break through. I actually wrote a blog, and then my last blog, where it was the darkest hours before the dawn, and that's when most people usually give up, is right at that dark hour, and then they kind of come up for air, and then they're like, nah, it's not going to work.
Yeah, yeah, you're bang on. All your hardships you learn from, right? And if you go through a lot of hardships early on in your career, like a lot of people do, you come out way stronger than if you didn't go through those hardships at all, and you have to deal with them later on in life.
Yeah. And here's how I look at it as well too. This is what I truly believe, is that you have to go through those challenges. And then when you do break through, you now have that new gift or that new talent, and you need that to get through the next challenge, because the next challenge is going to be even bigger or even larger. And if you're unable to break through that other one, there's no way you're going to be able to get through the next one.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
So, no, that's great.
Absolutely.
Now, so how can people learn more about Ryan and get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can check out my my website at rwcarrinvestment.com. I've got a blog there that I update pretty regularly, just talking about some of the properties that I'm doing, some of the walkthroughs on my vertical splits, some videos, that kind of thing. You can email me at info@rwcarrinvestment.com, or you can check out my Facebook page, RW Carr Investment or Ryan Carr, and get in contact with me that way.
All right, great. And is there anything that you can kind of just leave our listeners with before we kind of wrap everything up that you think will be very beneficial?
I would say just taking action on what you're learning. If you're going to those seminars, do something with it. If you're reading those books, do something with it. Talk to the right people, ask the right questions, and be prepared. That's the biggest thing. Just being prepared, and if you understand your why and you're prepared, the deals will fall into place, and you will be successful.
Yeah, and it's incredible. I've done quite a few podcasts now. I've talked to some incredibly successful people, such as yourself, and that seems to be the common theme is action. It really truly is, and I think that's where a lot of people fall down, is just they don't take that action. So great advice.
Yeah.
What a fun podcast. I really enjoyed doing this with you, Ryan. I learned a lot from it. I think our listeners will learn a lot from this as well too. And I definitely will have you on again. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you having me out.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll give you a call, because I definitely want to come out and take a look at a property that's not got a vertical split in yet, so that I can see what it is that you actually see, because I need to understand that.
Awesome. I'd be happy to show you.
All right, cool, Ryan. Listen, thanks again. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.
All right, take care. Bye. We hope you enjoyed this month's podcast. Please visit www.smarthomechoice.ca for all your investing needs.